The casket was small, too small. That was the first thought that struck Liana as the ropes began to lower it into the earth. Her hands trembled so badly that she pressed them hard against her black dress, as if she could trap the shaking inside. Tears streamed down her face, silent and endless. She didn't bother wiping them anymore. The sound of the pulley squealing felt like it was pulling apart her chest. Inside that small box lay her 9-year-old son, Milo, the boy who had once promised to become a doctor so he could fix kids like me. Now there would be no fixing anything. Her knees threatened to give out, but she locked them tight, refusing to fall. 8 months earlier, doctors had given a name to the monster stealing her boy's strength, a rare blood disorder, they'd said, as if a name could tame it. Milo had taken the news better than anyone expected. "Will it hurt?" he'd asked in that calm, steady voice that always amazed her. "Sometimes," the doctor replied gently, "but we'll do everything we can to help." Milo had simply nodded, brave as ever. Through months of needles, transfusions, and hospital smells, he never once complained. "I'm okay, Mom," he'd whisper, his eyes soft and bright. "Don't cry. We're superheroes, remember?" Now, standing beside his grave, Liana felt as though every sound in the world had vanished. No wind, no birds, just the hollow thud of soil meeting wood. Around her, the empty cemetery stretched wide, cruel in its silence. Her parents weren't there. Neither was her sister, Vivian, who had promised to always be there. Even Mara, her best friend since childhood, was missing. Liana's chest tightened. She pulled out her phone, a habit she couldn't shake, and instantly regretted it. Vivian's social feed loaded. There it was, photos of her engagement party at the Grand Meridian Hotel, posted 20 minutes ago. Vivian stood in those photos, radiant in silver satin, her champagne glass raised high. Their parents smiled beside her as though nothing in the world had gone wrong. Liana stared until the screen blurred. Her son was being buried while her family toasted to new beginnings. The weight of betrayal pressed heavier than her grief. "Are you all right, dear?" came a soft voice. It was Mrs. Alden, her elderly neighbor, the only one who had come. The woman's wrinkled hand rested lightly on Liana's arm. For months, she had brought hot meals, watched Milo when Liana needed a shower, sat quietly during hospital nights. "They didn't come," Liana whispered, barely audible. "Not one of them." Mrs. Alden's eyes shimmered. "That boy loved you more than anyone on this earth," she said quietly. Liana nodded, remembering Milo's laughter before illness had dulled it, the way it bubbled out of him, unstoppable and pure. She remembered his superhero pajamas, the ones he wore to every treatment, because heroes don't get scared. A weak smile tugged at her lips before dissolving again. She thought of Ethan, her ex-husband, who had set up a college trust fund for Milo before moving overseas for work. "If anything happens," he had said, "you'll handle it. I trust you." He could never have imagined how those words would come back to haunt her. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her mother. "We need to talk. Bring the trust documents tomorrow." Liana stared, numb. She typed back, "I'm burying my son today. Not now." The reply came instantly. "Don't be dramatic, Liana. This is important for the whole family." The words slammed into her chest. The whole family, the same people who hadn't bothered to attend Milo's funeral. Her tears dried into something sharper: anger, disbelief, resolve. She turned off her phone and tucked it away. "Whatever they want," she said softly, "it can wait." Mrs. Alden squeezed her shoulder. "You're not alone, dear. I'm here." The next morning, a gray drizzle mirrored her mood as Liana drove to her parents' home in Oakview Heights. The closer she got, the tighter she gripped the steering wheel. She parked behind a familiar silver car, Mara's. So, she was part of this, too. The front door opened before she reached it. Her father stood there with a face that looked sympathetic but felt rehearsed. "Liana, come in," he said. "We've been waiting." Inside, the living room looked like a business meeting. Vivian sat on the cream sofa, elegant as always, her engagement ring flashing. Her mother hovered by the mantel, a framed family photo in her hand. No one said a word about Milo. Her father gestured toward a folder on the coffee table. We need to reallocate the trust, he began, with Vivian as trustee. He slid a pen toward her. Sign here. Liana blinked, uncomprehending. What? Vivian crossed her legs gracefully. You're not in the right state to manage something this big. We're just trying to help, she said sweetly. Her mother chimed in. You've never been great with money, darling. Remember that boutique idea after college? Thank heavens your father talked you out of it. Liana turned toward Mara, searching for a trace of support. Her friend only looked away, studying her nails. Her father tapped the papers. We've already consulted Ethan's lawyer. Given your emotional state, he agrees this is the best option. Liana's pulse quickened. She flipped through the papers and froze. Legal terms about mental competency evaluations. Research printouts dated more than a year ago, when Milo had first fallen ill. You've been planning this since he got sick? She whispered, voice trembling. Vivian sighed. You're overreacting. That's exactly why we're worried. Her father leaned forward. If you don't sign, we'll have to petition for guardianship. The words landed like blows. For the first time, Liana realized this wasn't concern. It was a takeover. Liana pulled a folded blueprint from the folder, plans for Vivian's luxury remodel. You never even visited Milo, she said quietly. Not once. Vivian shrugged. We all grieve differently. Then came the truth. Robert's company was short on cash, the wedding in danger, their parents struggling with debt. We're not villains, her father said. Just family in need. Liana gathered the papers. Then you'll understand if I need time. Don't walk away, her father warned. But she already had, out the door and into the rain, feeling something stronger than grief. In her car, Liana's phone buzzed. Mrs. Alden texted. How did it go? Then Ethan's parents called, their voices trembling with real sorrow. He loved that boy, they said. After the call, she remembered Ethan's lawyer, Ryan Donovan, and dialed. Hours later, she sat in his office, explaining everything. They want control of Milo's trust, she said. They think I'm unfit. Donovan opened Ethan's file and handed her a letter. Ethan's handwriting read, if the worst happens, the trust belongs to Liana. She gave everything for our son. Her tears came, but this time they carried strength. Donovan showed her phone logs. Her parents and sister had called his firm months ago. They were planning early, he said. But the trust is solid. They can't touch it. So what now? She asked. They'll claim you're unstable. We fight truth with proof. Save every message, every detail. Liana nodded. For the first time, she wasn't lost. The next day, they met at a cafe. Mrs. Alden watched from outside. Liana's family arrived together, polished and cold. You signed, right? Vivian asked. Liana kept her hand over the envelope. Why didn't you come to Milo's funeral? Her mother sighed. We had commitments. Liana showed them photos, Vivian laughing at her party that same hour. The room fell silent. Ethan made this trust for Milo and me, she said. No one else. Her father's voice dropped. You'll regret this. Liana stood. Not anymore. Outside, Mrs. Alden smiled from her car. Liana answered Donovan's call, retelling everything. Good, he said. You set boundaries. They'll go for guardianship next, be ready. Later, Ethan's parents promised to testify. Her old coworker texted support. For the first time in months, Liana didn't feel alone. Days later, Liana and Donovan built their defense. They'll say grief makes you unfit, he said. She handed him hospital logs, teacher letters, bank statements, all proof she had managed everything. My parents never came once, she said flatly. Donovan nodded. We'll show that. Facts, not emotion. Mrs. Alden's journals would serve as neutral evidence. We're ready, Liana said. Then came a warning text. Mara is asking about hospital schedules. Donovan frowned. They'll twist your breakdowns into instability. I did fall apart, Liana admitted. But I never stopped fighting. Soon Mrs. Alden arrived with stacks of journals. Let them talk, she said fiercely. I wrote everything. Together, they pinned photos and proof to the wall. Milo's life, her care, their betrayal. It's enough, Donovan said. The next morning, a sheriff handed her papers, emergency guardianship petition. Mara's signature leapt from the page. They twisted her private moments, her tears, her mistakes. They're claiming I'm unstable, she told Donovan. Expected, he replied. But we're prepared. On the news, her family played victims, begging sympathy. Donovan stayed calm. The court will see the truth. You're not alone in this. That night, Vivian came to her door, voice sweet but eyes sharp. Drop your opposition. Sign over control, and no one will know about your episodes. Liana kept the chain locked. You should leave. You've always been the burden, Vivian hissed before storming off. Liana recorded everything and sent it to Donovan. Perfect, he replied. Minutes later, Mrs. Alden arrived with tea. Tomorrow, we show them what strength looks like, she said. In Milo's room, Liana whispered. Tomorrow is for you. The courthouse felt colder than Liana expected. The marble floors echoed under her heels as she walked beside Donovan, Mrs. Alden, and Ethan's parents. Reporters lingered outside, cameras flashing, but she kept her eyes forward. Inside the courtroom, her family sat in a neat row, Vivian perfectly composed, her parents solemn and practiced, Mara nervous but obediently aligned with them. Liana swallowed hard. They look like mourners, she thought bitterly, but they didn't even mourn my son. She touched the locket at her neck, Milo's photo inside, a silent reminder of why she was there. When the judge entered, the air stiffened. This court will hear both sides with fairness, she said firmly. Vivian's lawyer rose first, a tall man with expensive shoes and a tone polished by years of manipulation. This is a family trying to help a grieving woman who's lost control of her life, he began. Her behavior has been erratic, poor financial decisions, emotional instability, refusal of support. He gestured toward them dramatically. They only want to protect her. Mara was called next. She avoided Liana's eyes as she spoke. She changed after Milo got sick, she murmured. She cried a lot, barely slept, called me at night saying the doctors were lying. Liana stared at her, heartbreaking. You held my hand through those nights, she thought. You knew I was terrified, not crazy. Then her mother took the stand, dabbing her eyes with a tissue she didn't need. It's heartbreaking to see her fall apart like this, she said, voice quivering perfectly. We just want to save her from herself. It's not about money, it's love. The judge nodded, taking notes. Liana's chest tightened. For a terrible moment, it seemed to be working. The performance, the tears, the lies, it was convincing. She looked down at her shaking hands until Donovan's calm voice grounded her. Hold steady, he whispered. Truth speaks louder than rehearsed sorrow. When it was their turn, Donovan rose slowly. Your Honor, he said, his voice carrying quiet authority. What stands before you isn't love, it's manipulation. The courtroom stilled. This woman cared for her son through every stage of a terminal illness alone. The people claiming to protect her abandoned her. Yet they reappeared the moment they discovered a trust fund. He lifted a file and began to read dates, hospital appointments, invoices, prescriptions, school letters, all proving Liana's relentless care and clear judgment. Grief doesn't erase competence, he concluded. It proves devotion. Mrs. Alden took the stand next, small but steady. I saw everything, she said firmly. Every night, she slept in that hospital chair. Every morning she smiled for her boy even when she was falling apart inside. Liana didn't lose control. She held everything together when no one else showed up. Then Ethan's father spoke. My son built that trust, so Liana would never struggle again. He told me himself, Dad, if anything happens, she gets everything. She earned it. Silence filled the room, heavy and real. Even the judge leaned forward now, her expression shifting. Donovan pressed a button, and the speakers filled the courtroom with a chilling sound. Vivian's recorded voice from the night before. We'll destroy your reputation, Liana. Everyone will know how unstable you are. Gasps rippled through the audience. Vivian's face drained of color. Her mother's hand dropped from her pearls. Liana sat still, tears forming but not falling. This is it, she thought. The mask is breaking. The judge called a brief recess. When court resumed, Donovan played another clip, the cafe conversation, where her parents discussed using the trust money for debts and renovations. No one in that courtroom could pretend anymore. The judge's voice rang firm and clear. I find no basis for this petition. In fact, what I see is an attempt to exploit a grieving mother. She turned to Vivian. You will remain silent. Then to Liana. Mrs. Walker, you've acted with strength, clarity, and integrity under unthinkable circumstances. The guardianship petition is dismissed with prejudice. Liana's breath caught. Dismissed with prejudice. They couldn't refile. The judge's gaze softened. Your son would be proud of you. For a moment, Liana couldn't speak. Her tears finally came, quiet and clean. Her parents tried to stand, perhaps to plead, but a bailiff stepped between them. The judge added, an immediate restraining order will be issued. They are not to contact you again. Donovan turned to her, his professional calm melting into a proud smile. You did it, he whispered. Justice held. Mrs. Alden squeezed Liana's hand. Milo would be smiling right now. Ethan's parents embraced her, their warmth breaking through the stiffness of the courtroom. For the first time, Liana felt surrounded not by enemies, but by true family. Outside, cameras flashed as soon as she stepped into the sunlight. Reporters shouted questions. Liana paused, standing tall. How do you feel about the verdict? One called out. She lifted her chin. Today, justice was done for my son, she said softly. And for once, the sound of her own voice didn't shake. That night, she sat at her kitchen table with Mrs. Alden beside her. Donovan's message glowed on her phone. The trust is secure. You did it. She looked toward Milo's photo on the wall and whispered, We did it, sweetheart. And for the first time since the diagnosis, she slept in peace. A week later, Liana sat across from a financial advisor in a quiet office overlooking the city skyline. The folder before her no longer terrified her. It felt like control, like the future Milo had deserved. These investment options will sustain the foundation while preserving the main fund, the advisor explained. Liana nodded thoughtfully, her posture calm, professional. The Pediatric Hematology Fellowship must be fully funded, she said. That's non-negotiable. The man smiled. Understood, Mrs. Walker. The title didn't sting anymore. It felt earned. As she left the office, the autumn air felt lighter against her skin. The restraining order was in place. Her parents and sister had vanished from her life, and for the first time, she was grateful for silence. The local paper ran the story under a bold headline, Mother Vindicated in Trust Battle. The article spread fast, painting the truth clearly, how Liana fought not for money, but for her son's legacy. Strangers began sending letters, parents thanking her for giving them courage. Even Vivian's fiancé called to apologize before publicly announcing their engagement was off. Her parents faced possible perjury charges, and Mara lost her job after her false testimony went viral online. None of it brought satisfaction, only a strange calm. Justice had a quiet sound, Liana realized. It didn't roar, it simply ended the noise. That evening, Mrs. Alden waited outside the financial building in her old Buick, smiling proudly as Liana approached. All set, she asked. All set, Liana replied, sliding into the passenger seat. The ride home was peaceful. They talked about simple things, flowers, recipes, the changing weather. Never thought I could do any of this, Liana admitted softly. Stand up to them. Build something new. Mrs. Alden patted her hand. You did more than stand up, dear. You transformed pain into purpose. That boy gave you his strength, and you used it well. That night, Liana dreamed of Milo. Not sick or pale, but laughing, whole, running through fields of gold. When she woke, sunlight filled the room instead of dread. Donovan called that morning. The foundation paperwork is complete. The trust is legally locked. Not even the Supreme Court could change it now, he said, almost smiling through the phone. Liana laughed softly, the sound surprising her.
Thank you, Ryan.
For everything. You did the hard part, he said. You chose to fight. Weeks turned into months. The neighbors organized meal deliveries, soups, casseroles, fresh bread. It wasn't pity anymore, it was community. People who had once waved politely now rang her bell and shared stories about their own struggles. Liana realized something profound. Family isn't always blood. It's who shows up when the world doesn't. She kept Milo's photo by her desk, not as a reminder of loss, but of love that had changed everything. We're okay, buddy, she whispered one evening. Really okay. 6 months later, Liana stood in a bright hospital corridor, facing a plaque that gleamed under new lights, the Milo Walker Memorial Wing. The walls were painted with underwater scenes, coral and sea turtles, exactly what Milo used to draw. A young nurse approached her, beaming. I'm Jennifer Abrams, the first Milo Walker scholar, she said. I'm training in pediatric hematology because of this program. I can't thank you enough. Liana smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. Milo would have loved that. He wanted to be a doctor himself. For the first time, she could speak his name and smile without breaking. The Milo's Legacy Foundation grew faster than she dreamed. It offered emergency housing near hospitals, covered treatment gaps insurance ignored, and funded nurses who specialized in rare blood disorders. Every board meeting felt like planting something alive. Mrs. Alden became volunteer coordinator, leading a network of helpers who delivered meals and watched children during long hospital stays. Donovan handled all the legal work pro bono, refusing payment every time. Ethan's parents became advocates for other grandparents facing similar heartbreaks. You've built something beautiful from tragedy, Ethan's mother said during one of her visits. And you've given us a way to honor him too. Liana began speaking at parent support groups, sharing her story without trembling. The first step, she'd tell them, is believing you can survive it. The second is realizing you don't have to do it alone. Her words carried weight because they were true. She had walked through every kind of darkness and found light anyway. People started calling her the mother who fought the system. She never corrected them. She didn't fight the system, she thought. She fought for her son and for the dignity that grief tried to take away. A year after Milo's funeral, she returned to the cemetery, this time walking with calm steps instead of trembling ones. The air smelled of grass and rain. She placed new flowers by his headstone and traced his name with her fingertips. A woman approached shyly, holding her daughter's hand, a small girl with bright eyes. Are you Mrs. Walker? The woman asked. I'm Sarah. This is Emma. My daughter had the same condition as your son. The doctor funded by your program found a treatment that worked. You saved her life. Liana knelt to meet the little girl's eyes. Thank you for telling me, she said softly. Emma hugged her, tiny arms warm around her neck. When they left, Liana placed Milo's favorite action figure at the base of a stone. I kept my promise, she whispered. Your legacy is alive and growing. Liana stood for a while longer, watching the sunlight play across the marble letters of her son's name. The cemetery no longer felt like a place of loss. It felt like connection, a quiet bridge between past and purpose. Around her, birds sang softly, as if even they sensed the peace that had replaced the storm. You did it, Milo, she whispered. You changed more lives than you ever knew. The wind stirred gently, brushing her cheek like a tiny, familiar hand. She smiled through the tears that finally came, not from sorrow this time, but gratitude. On the drive home, she passed the old hospital where Milo had spent so many nights. The parking lot was full, the windows glowing with life. She didn't look away this time. She remembered his laughter echoing down the hall, the way he made nurses smile, even when hooked to machines. You were light in the darkest place, she said aloud, as though he could still hear her. And maybe, in some quiet way, he could. Weeks later, the Foundation's first annual fundraising gala filled the hospital's atrium. Banners in blue and silver hung from the ceiling, Milo's favorite colors. Doctors, parents, donors, and children filled the room, each connected by one small boy's story. Liana stood on stage, her heart steady as she began to speak. "When my son was sick," she said, "I thought strength meant not crying. I was wrong. Strength is showing up, even when you're broken. Strength is love that refuses to end." The applause rose slowly, sincerely, like waves against the shore. After the event, Jennifer, the young nurse scholar, approached with a shy smile. "Mrs. Walker, one of the patients wanted to give you this." She handed Liana a crayon drawing, a child's sketch of a superhero flying over a hospital. Across the bottom, in messy handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for helping kids like me." Liana pressed the paper to her heart. "It's perfect," she whispered. At home, she framed that drawing beside Milo's photo. The two images, the real boy and the one he'd inspired, stood side by side, proof that love outlasts everything. Mrs. Alden visited often, still bringing soup and stories, though now their talks were filled with laughter more than tears. Donovan remained part of her circle too, checking in regularly, making sure everything stayed in order. The people who had once been strangers had become her chosen family, the kind that shows up without being asked. Sometimes, late at night, Liana would sit on the porch with a cup of tea, staring at the stars. She still missed Milo with every breath, but the ache had changed shape. It was no longer an open wound. It was a scar that glowed faintly with meaning. "We're doing good, kiddo," she'd murmur to the night sky. "You be proud." And in the stillness, she felt it, that soft, invisible warmth that told her he was. Her parents never reached out again. The court's ruling had silenced them more effectively than anger ever could. Vivian moved away quietly, her name whispered in news circles after her company collapsed. Liana didn't celebrate their downfall. She had no space left for bitterness. Forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about freeing herself. "Letting go doesn't mean forgetting," she told Mrs. Alden one afternoon. "It just means the pain doesn't get to lead anymore." The older woman smiled. "Exactly right, dear." 1 year later, the foundation funded a new research lab. Scientists called it Project Hope, dedicated to developing better treatments for rare blood disorders. Liana attended the opening, standing beside a wall engraved with Milo's name and the words "Inspiring Courage Through Care." Reporters asked her what drove her to keep going. She answered simply, "Because love doesn't end when life does. It becomes purpose." Her voice was clear, steady, filled with quiet fire. That evening, she returned home to find the setting sun spilling gold across her porch. The air smelled like rain and memory. She held the framed superhero drawing close, her heart full. "We made it, Milo," she whispered. "Your legacy is alive." For a moment, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint sound of laughter, his laughter, and she knew she was right. The story wasn't about loss anymore. It was about love that refused to die. Liana smiled, lifted her eyes to the horizon, and stepped forward into the light of her new beginning. Please like, comment, and subscribe.